Now, Matt, in the words of Mr. Callahan from the movie Tommy Boy, or Tommy himself, the quote is, "You could get a good look at a T-bone by sticking your head up a bull's ass, but wouldn't you sooner take the butcher's word for it?" Matt, we've been calling for Brandon Moreno to get a title shot for a long time. We've also been saying Brandon Moreno flyweight champion by the end of 2020 for a couple of years now. That might seem insane. Take my word for it. You can go back through all of our content, all the content I had on Loudmouth MMA. Anywhere you want to find where I've worked, I've said Brandon Moreno, future champ by the end of 2020. And yeah, is he ever getting a shot here against Deiveson Figueiredo? Matt, this fight is amazing. This fight is very exciting. I was less excited for Deiveson Figueiredo when he fought Alex Perez a couple of weeks ago because Brandon Moreno was higher ranked and didn't get the fight. But ultimately, we get it here and now. Two of the best flyweights, two of the most dynamic guys, and two great finishers in this fight. If you sleep on the flyweight division, or if you're not a fan, if you got buddies and pals that aren't fans of flyweight, and you think, hey, if I ran into that guy at a bar, I could beat the shit out of him. Not these two guys. These guys are going to bring it. You want your friends to watch this fight. Matt, I'm really excited about it because normally I don't curse and swear in videos, but it's happening right now. I love this fight stylistically. Overall, just at the start, give me your excitement level on this fight, and what do you make of it?
I think we need to come clean on something. Brandon Moreno's my joke, and you're Carlos Mencia. I've been on the Brandon Moreno train since his first run in the UFC. I remember him choking out Louis Smolka in his UFC debut. I've been around, okay? And after he came back to the UFC, I was so excited for his fight against Askar Askarov. And you can say what you want about that fight. Did he win? Did he lose? He out-grappled one of the better grapplers in the division, and I think that's the most important point you can take from that fight, no matter what the verdict was. He's fighting not the best flyweight of all time. I almost said it, then I remembered a guy named Demetrius Johnson. I would argue the biggest finishing threat in flyweight history. Fun stat came out. Deiveson Figueiredo is the only flyweight ever to have 3 knockouts and 3 submission wins. He can get it done in both ways, and I really like the different, I guess, tools of Deiveson Figueiredo. He's a primary striker. We all know him for that beautiful knockout power that he has, but he has a really advanced and developed defensive submission game, so that when people are tired of dealing with that really nice power striking that he has, if you shoot a lazy takedown, he's going to take your head off. And I don't mean that in a way that he's going to hit you with an uppercut. His guillotine is straight up filthy. It is better than anything for the French Revolution. He goes out there, and the second he clamps that on, you can just tell the fear in a fighter's face. Not everyone has what Joe Rogan calls the squeeze, but Deiveson Figueiredo has the squeeze, and we've seen it in multiple fights. Again, this is the most exciting fight that can be matched up at flyweight today.
So, Matt, really I gotta come clean, and you make fun of me on the Mencia thing. I'll tell you why I've been on the Brandon Moreno train. Because Askar Askarov was one of my guys. And again, I talk about it all the time. I've got that board. There's the guys like Piotryan, Askar Askarov coming over from ACB. There's all sorts of fighters at there. But Askarov, for me, was that guy outside of 125. I think me and Marcel Dorf were the two guys just blowing that horn, just pumping that trumpet. Check out Manscaped. Great stuff, presenting sponsor. But overall, we were all over Askar Askarov coming into the UFC. And for Brandon Moreno to perform as well as he did in that fight, it won me over so much so that I could tell the guy already has the power. The guy already has the volume. He has the submission abilities. And if he can scramble and tango in there with a guy as credentialed as Askar Askarov, then he really has that sticking power. And then you look at the other ones. Kai Kara-France beats him by decision, beats UCA Formiga, and then finishes Brandon Royval in a weird fight. It was weird the way that it ended, but it was a drubbing by Brandon Moreno in that one up to that point. So, big win for Moreno just a couple of weeks ago to get himself this shot that ultimately he really did deserve. And for Figueiredo, you look at the one loss against Formiga, but then it's wins over Pantoja, Tim Elliott, Joseph Benavidez, Alex Perez. Those are some big names.
All by
some big wins.
Oh, 100%. When Deiveson Figueiredo fights someone, it's not like the Demetrius Johnson where when he fought, you knew he was going to win, and you just kind of, it didn't really matter how he was going to win. You just kind of knew what the outcome was going to be. With Deiveson Figueiredo, he has a bunch of different options. Now, no, he's not going to German suplex you into an armbar, but I would argue he is the most he's the best striker in 125 history. I do think he's a better at least striker than Demetrius Johnson was, and I do think the power that Figueiredo has in this weight class is almost unmatched. I would say his power at flyweight is almost equivalent to the power of a Francis at heavyweight. Pound for pound, I do think he's one of the hardest hitters in all of the UFC, and really all of MMA in general. Brandon Moreno's an interesting puzzle to solve, if you will, because he can fight very similar to the one guy who has beaten Figueiredo, and that was Jose Formiga. Now, Moreno and Formiga had a very close fight themselves because they do share a similar style, but what does Brandon Moreno do really well? Well, he throws a very high output. He isn't the most hittable guy because he's known to land and then he'll get out of range, and land and get out of range. And he has a really good scrambling and wrestling game. And those are the things that will give Figueiredo problems. I know Tim Elliott has some of those, and he got clamped up fairly fast. I know Alex Perez has pretty good scrambles. But that's the foundation of Brandon Moreno's game. It's, I'm going to strike with you, and then I'm going to shoot for a takedown. And I might not get the takedown based on what I was going for, but however you react to defend it, I'm going to go for your back, I'm going to go for a trip. He's really dynamic, and he's always keeping his opponent thinking, which is something I really like for a guy who's almost a 3-1 underdog.
And I mean, in this fight, the one thing that you have to like is the fact that Brandon Moreno, you go from Mexico to Vegas, you stick around, you get your team there. I know he had Luis Smolka in a lot of the promos with Jason House hanging out, wearing his Garfield t-shirt, being a quirky, weird fella that he is. But he seems like a great guy and a great face to have at the top of this flyweight division. And oh, by the way, UFC cut him less than 2 years ago. How crazy is that?
There was no one more upset than me. I don't know how you can cut a fighter. He had a main event against Sergio Pettis, loses to Alejandro Pantoja. No shame in that. One of the more exciting guys at 125. And then they cut him. Now, the great news for Brandon Moreno is life's gotten a lot better since then. The improvements that he has made from his first run in the UFC really are mesmerizing. And the fight in the UFC that he had the most film time, if you will, is that main event against Sergio Pettis. And there were some moments that you really liked that I do think we can sort of compare to the Figueiredo matchup. He had phenomenal grappling, and you could tell that, again, the fight IQ of Brandon Moreno is very high, and it does force his opponent to react to what he's doing constantly, because he is always doing something. Figueiredo, though, he can wait on the counter shot, and wait on the counter shot, and wait on the counter shot. And I would not be surprised at all if the first round of this fight, Brandon Moreno outstrikes Deiveson Figueiredo, and they're going to pull up a graphic on the screen. They'll be like, wow, he outstruck him like 43-10. The difference, though, is what would you rather do? Get hit by Brandon Moreno 40 times or get hit by Deiveson Figueiredo 10 times? And really cool stat came out. Deiveson Figueiredo almost has a 5% knockdown on strikes thrown in the UFC. That means for every 20 significant strikes, which isn't really that high of a number, he's almost guaranteed one knockdown. So I have to ask myself, can Deiveson Figueiredo land 20 strikes in this fight? Of course he can. He's probably going to land upwards 60, 70, maybe even 80, just depending on how long the fight goes. When you're dealing with those levels of volume against a guy like Moreno, Figueiredo only needs one. So we're giving him a pretty big clip to be firing from with a guy who has so much power.
The weird thing there's a lot of weird things about this fight. The weird thing with Deiveson Figueiredo, I remember going into that first Joseph Benavidez fight. We went back, watched a lot of fight tape on Figueiredo, and picked up on the fact that in the fight against Jose Formiga, his lone professional loss, because he's 20-1, he missed weight in that fight, and he had to cut so much weight to make that one.
So yeah, one of my big claims to fame is that I called Figueiredo was going to miss weight for the Benavidez fight, not because he'd ever missed weight before, but it's a fact that has always stuck in my head, and he looked like trash against Formiga. I think it's fair to say we didn't see Deiveson Figueiredo in that fight. We saw a guy who cut 40 pounds. It was 39 to be accurate, but still, when you weigh 125 pounds and you're cutting down from 165, so you're basically a welterweight trying to make the lowest weight class possible, is absolutely insane. And I do like the keywords that have been coming out of Figueiredo's camp ever since he has got the title. It's a lot of, oh, well, I've reinvested a lot of this extra income that I've acquired back into myself. I have better training camps now. I have a nutritionist. I'm able to focus a lot more on myself because I have more resources available to me. I like a lot of those things that we are hearing from Figueiredo's camp. It does concern me a little bit, though, him coming off a weight cut not that long ago. And I do see Figueiredo as a guy who will fight at 135 at some point. I do think either for money fight purposes or just because his body can't make the weight cut anymore, I do think we will see him at bantamweight. He's so heavily muscled for this division. That's something that concerns me. If he does cut a lot of weight, comes into this fight just kind of expecting to knock out Moreno early, and he isn't able to get him out of there early, and it is just Brandon Moreno, pitter-patter, go for a takedown. Maybe I don't get it, but at least I'm putting that in Figueiredo's mind. I think Brandon Moreno can have a lot of long, extended periods where it's like, wow, Brandon Moreno might be the next champ. Problem is, though, Deiveson Figueiredo has what I'm just going to start calling, he has the 4-point shot. He has the thing that doesn't even exist. He can be down basically 50-45 and pull a Jairzinho Rosenstrike in the last second of a fight. That's the kind of power that we're dealing with from Deiveson Figueiredo, and we've seen Brandon Moreno struggle with some of those more heavy-handed punchers in the past. Pantoja is a guy who beat him on The Ultimate Fighter, and also once they made it to the UFC. Not to say Pantoja fights in an exact style to Figueiredo, but it's a good comparison because he is a very power punch heavy guy at flyweight. And that worries me for Brandon Moreno. I know he's not the most hittable man in the world. Kai Kara France, a guy who's a really good striker that Brandon Moreno was able to outstrike, but we're dealing with a lot of guys who don't have the pop on their shots like Figueiredo does. And again, it's just really hard to forget about the power advantage that Figueiredo does because it's so monumental between the two.
And the big difference, too, between a guy like Pantoja and a guy like Figueiredo, Pantoja is one of those brooding, brawling type of guys that's just marching forward, throwing the kitchen sink at you. Deiveson Figueiredo, a little bit more precise with the striking. The other thing about Brandon Moreno, the strike differential I don't love. It's slightly positive. It's actually in the negative for Deiveson Figueiredo, if you can believe it. But again, you can need a few shots if you're going to land that one power shot, that X factor. Matt, we actually have more votes in Tapology right now in the YouTube community tab with Fight Night Picks. 84% of 1,003 votes going with Deiveson Figueiredo, not Brandon Moreno. Are you surprised there at all?
Not really. Let's be honest. I love Brandon Moreno more than anyone. And I'm going to say, I'm the real conductor of this Brandon Moreno train. You might own the keys to the Piotr Jan train, the Askar Askarov train. There's a few of them that you've been conducting very well. I've been Brandon Moreno's #1 fan for a minute now, and I still don't think he's going to win. It's unfortunate to say, because I know we've been going on Brandon Moreno champ by the end of 2020. It would be really nice if I could come here and say, like, wow, this is actually a stylistic match.
I'm glad I was wrong.
Exactly. But again, you're dealing with Deiveson Figueiredo, who I do believe, if he does have his weight on point, if everything's going right for him, not to say he's a transcendent talent, but I think it's going to be a really hard ask for anyone at flyweight right now to beat him.
I don't know if I'd say transcendent talent just based on the weight class. I would say if Deiveson Figueiredo beats Brandon Moreno here, he is the fighter of the year. I don't think there's even a conversation. There's nobody else close. This guy has won 2020. It's been a tough year for everybody. I know it's been a tough year for everybody, but for Deiveson Figueiredo, the 2 wins over Benavidez, the knock that he missed weight in the first one, all right, that's fair. But then he finishes him in the second one. He finishes Perez. And if he can get a win over Moreno, even just a win, it's an extra title defense. It's an extra thing to add. And I think that ultimately, fighter of the year, Deiveson Figueiredo. And I am ultimately picking him here. I mean, he is a pretty big favorite. Opened at a -275. He's now an average -327. For Brandon Moreno, open to +235, now to +255. And I mean, listen, we have more votes in the YouTube community tab. But if you look over on Tapology, 892 total votes, 89% have Figueiredo, 60% have him by knockout.
Again, I can't disagree with any of that. We're probably going to see a Figueiredo finish. It breaks my heart to say, but I do see that as the fight.
Matt, really looking forward to this one. We're both going with Deiveson Figueiredo. And hey, Matt, we have a crazy week. There's a recap show out there from last weekend. There's This Week in MMA coming out. We have 2 really good guests on that one. We have Early Stoppage, the podcast. You can find all of these picks and predictions on iTunes, Spotify, whatever podcatcher you use. Some great Fight Night Picks merch over the store, fightnightpicks.net. So make sure you check out all that great Fight Night Picks content. We really appreciate all the support that we've had from all you fans this year in 2020. It's really been special to us. We're getting close to 18,000 subscribers. I think and I hope that we can get up to the 20,000 mark before the end of the year. I know it's possible. I'm really looking forward to the card this weekend, Matt. So keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks. And as we always say, let's get into it.